Hello, health seekers. Welcome to another episode of the Keto Pro podcast with myself, Richard Smith. Today, I am joined with Jonathan Griffiths. Jonathan Griffiths, aka the composition consultant. Jonathan offers a range of high-quality services to clients looking to achieve better health, physique, or training performance. Jonathan, welcome on board.
Hey, Richard. How's it going? Appreciate you having me on today. It was nice to meet you. Was it a week or two ago now from the Carnivore with the host, Coach Stephen Thomas?
Yes, it was. Yeah, pleasure to meet you too. And obviously you were a guest on there. The content you brought was absolutely incredible. Amazing 24 hours, incredibly tiring, especially in the latter hours. But I'm glad we did it. And I think an annual 24-hour carnivore-a-thon is definitely on the cards. But I think the biggest mistake I think we made was not giving people enough time. I think it was so easy. We were worried about filling the 24 hours because there's only so much you can talk about in regards to, being carnivore. And we thought after the first few hours, everything that needs to be said is going to be said, but everybody came from a different niche or a different perspective. So everyone's story was different. But all benefit. One thing that I did notice is that everybody that came on looked incredibly healthy. I don't know if you've noticed. I'm
not very healthy at the moment, Richard. I'm the most drained I've been in a long time. I've had sleepless nights and my body's very tired. I'm still battling from some of the side effects of medication. So what you see today isn't representative of my best self, in all honesty. But yeah, I appreciate that. I agree. Yeah, most people, definitely. Yeah. I was looking at some people that were like Colt, for example. One of my friends, Colt, he's, I believe, like 31 years old, something like that. He looks like early 20s. The same with yourself. I won't even guess how old you are, but you look about probably my age. So
how old are you?
Cool stuff. I'm 28.
28. I'm 40 at the end of this year.
There we go.
So I genuinely think that I look younger now than I did in my mid-20s. I'm definitely fitter now than I was in my 20s. But when I look at pictures, I looked incredibly unwell. I don't think the light today is very flattering for the Zoom, but thanks for that. Well, I'll take it any day.
Take it. But
yeah, for sure. I don't get many compliments these days, so I'll take
it helps.
that for sure. So let's jump into this then, Jonathan. So reading up about some of the bits and looking in, you used to work in a vegan health food shop. Is that right?
That's right. Yes, I worked in like the major high street chains of health food shops. I went into like an independent retailer. I started managing that one. I'm actually amazed to this day I got the job. I think it was just because I was very straightforward to the point, very honest, and looking for a background with working with different patients in a palliative care setting. I think it paid off. The way I approach people seems to be the right way to go about it. In the US, the people that might be watching this, I'm pretty sure the hospitality sector is a bit better. If you go into a shop in this country, people aren't very friendly. They're not very helpful, not very empathetic. So I've noticed it's a rarity. So I try to, project that as much as I can to help people because I think they appreciate that, When you're speaking to an old guy who's coming to the shop because he's got gout, he's got some arthritis, you're like, he's going to want to see a friendly face. He doesn't want to see someone who's miserable and young and doesn't want to be there. So, yeah. Yeah,
I agree. So were you vegan at the time?
Oh, God, no, I wasn't vegan. Funnily enough, that's actually when I think a few months into starting that job, that's when I turned carnivore, funnily enough.
Right. So do you want to tell everybody about your story? So, the goals initially were for cognition benefits. You suffer with autism and inflammatory issues. So you decided to gravitate into becoming carnivore in order to try to tackle those. Did going carnivore help?
Pretty much, yeah. The biggest benefit for me has been outside like meeting people like yourself and, lots of people in the carnivore, keto kind of space. It's been the fact that I can work more effectively with people. Ultimately, it's all good me having all this knowledge about nutrition, just like yourself, knowing all this stuff about diet and training. Your ability to communicate that information is what's going to impact your future. So I've noticed my ability to do that has significantly improved. If I was to say start my YouTube channel with a few subscribers I do have years ago, I wouldn't have been able to do it. No chance. I'd have been too anxious, made too many mistakes. I just felt down for doing it. I wouldn't have felt confident. Now my abilities are much higher, much better, if that makes sense. So yeah, the main thing for me has been the cognitive effects. I'd say if I was to say anything, the most obvious thing, which people that know me and how my life has transformed, has been that kind of benefit.
Yeah, and I think those are things that people take for granted as well. I've never been tested for autism or anything, but I used to suffer with severe anxiety and depression. I wouldn't be doing this today. I give talks in front of hundreds and thousands of people sometimes. We did the Carnivore-a-thon for 24 hours straight. I wouldn't have done that for £1 million. Genuinely, pre-keto carnivore. I struggled to leave my house. So even though my car was a couple of feet away on the drive, I'd struggle to walk to my car if there was another person in the street or if my neighbour was in their garden. And people used to think it's to do with me being rude, but it was because I struggled to communicate with people. I never felt worthy of the company of others, and I never felt that what I had to say, carried any weight. So I used to live in boxes. I quite often use the analogy that my entire life was spent living in boxes. I don't know if you can you can attest to this, but I would live in a box, my house. I would leave that to jump into another box, my metal box. I'd drive that metal box to another big box, to which I'd walk into and sit and reside in a small box inside the big box. And then I do everything in reverse to go home. So my life was spent living in boxes. I wouldn't venture out very often. And when I did, I struggled to communicate and speak with people. But living this way has had massive improvements on my ability to communicate, concentrate. And it makes sense because it comes down to the neurotransmitters in the brain, isn't it? Which is something we covered plenty of times in the 24 hour. But what we eat massively affects how the brain works, doesn't it? But I mean, to give us a rundown, you suffer with autism. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how that is so restrictive? Because I think people don't understand how restrictive that could be. I mean, as you say, for you then, it's completely changed your life. The fact that you changed your diet, you've got a successful YouTube channel with thousands and thousands of followers. Your intro video, which is absolutely incredible, which you've just personally said that you would not be able to have filmed prior to going carnivore, I think is incredibly open and honest. And I think that's why people bond to you, because you're incredibly open and approachable and honest. You listed some of the things that you suffered with, with pride. And I think you that's the line that you use in there. And I respect that. And I think that helps with other people following the channel and with your connection with it, But how does the autism, how does it affect the body sort of prior to being carnivore and compared to now? And what are the pitfalls that you think were holding you back?
Sure, yeah. First of all, thank you. I appreciate your kind words. It's very tricky, I'm sure, like you to accept compliments and
I hate
get credence to different things that you say. It's like one of these things you're like, oh, thanks for that, but that's an autistic trait. You mask to pretend that it's normal to you, and you just take it on the chin, sort of thing. But yeah, nowadays it's a lot easier for me to accept compliments because I realise I'm impacting more people. Something I was not able to do before. So yeah, I do say that proudly because I get people all the time message me. I get emails sometimes and it's like, I can't believe I've made this impact to this person on the other side of the world. I find that so bizarre because I'm just a guy from England, 28 years old, who happened to be an autistic bodybuilder with spine problems. It's so bizarre. But yeah, how it's affected me. So I wasn't diagnosed with autism until I was, I think, I was about 21, 22 years old, so quite late on in life. Up until the age of about 3 or 4 years old, I was quite mute, not really talkative, not really able to do a lot of things. Oftentimes I'd look to my family, my friends to answer questions people asked me them because I didn't know what to say. What that comes down to, I don't know. What I think is, what can I do from that point to change how I am in the future? People always worry about, what's the root cause, root cause, root cause. The thing is, you have it or you don't have it. You do this DSM-5, I think it's called, test. You have a score, then they take the next test, then through all that, the psychologist works out, yes, you are autistic. These are your strengths and weaknesses. And from that profiling, I think it's been very helpful, be able to decipher what I can and can't do. My ability to communicate is probably my best asset in terms of like autism. It's not a strength per se in my character or my abilities, but in terms of the autistic spectrum, that's something I score quite high on. So that allows me to mask my autism very well. So people won't actually understand when I act autistic, they won't see it. So that's been quite an interesting experience. So you always get, you don't seem autistic, but anyone that knows me on a personal level, yeah, they'll see it straight away and they can pick me apart like that. Now what it comes down to in diet, I think reducing the inflammation has been the biggest thing. What else? I mean, this will sound a bit bizarre, so you can go into all the mechanisms of biology, but I think a lot of it is meeting like-minded people that follow the carnivore diet or a ketogenic diet. They come to it because they've had to come to it through default. They've tried standard Western diet, they've tried the paleo diet, they've tried all this other stuff, all the supplements, all the products, and nothing seems to work. So yeah, it comes down to diet eventually, and through the diet I've met other people like yourself, people that are also like me, a bit neurodiverse, a bit weird in some cases. So it's made me feel more comfortable realizing that although I am my own unique individual, there's also people just like me affected by the same sort of things. I mean, I've met people like Thomas Clark, who hosts a YouTube channel called Meat Mosaic. I think he has a Facebook group called the Autistic Carnivores. And what worries me is that there's people like me which are getting a clear cause and effect benefit from this sort of way of eating. And yet groups like that only have 1,000, 2,000 followers or subscribers. And I think how many million people there are out there with autism, diagnosed or not. All these people could be positively impacted by people like Thomas Clark who promote the carnivore diet. So I'm actually glad I have this opportunity today to talk about this, because people will see the mass of the man that I am, and they'll just say, "Oh, we'll talk about bodybuilding." No, there's so much more I can go into. Like you mentioned earlier about the side of it, like the depression, the anxiety. I'd say nowadays I've got a lot to be depressed about. I'm in a lot of pain right now. I've had a lot of health difficulties, lots of toll on my body overall, lots of stressful situations I've had to pick myself out of. But I'm a human being and I want to persist. And the diet has, the ancestral diet, the carnivore diet has allowed me to persist in spite of all these setbacks. So it's maybe in a way more stoic, which is quite interesting, because I'm someone that used to be very bitter. And, like I said, I've got a lot to be bitter about. Life has not been easy. I'm sure lots of people that are watching this right now have experienced the same thing. So like Colt Milton, who was on the Carnivore, he has an autistic son. And he suspects he might also have that, or ADHD or something. Now, he was actually in a difficult position where he could not work any longer in the way that he was going about it in the year of 2020 due to global circumstances. So he had to reinvent himself. And I think a lot of people need to come to the carnivore diet and find what works for them, find a way to reinvent themselves. They won't know it overnight. So I'm not saying to people, you're going to try it out for about a week and get all the benefits. No, it's not going to happen. It's going to take time. There's an adaptation phase. So yeah, the carnivore diet, the main thing is meeting the right kind of people, people that have been through hell. They can emphasize with you and vice versa. And that kind of brings me to where I am now. I'm doing all right. I'm not doing too bad.
Yeah. There's so much that you just mentioned there that we could pick apart. I mean, what I tend to find with my line of work is that the majority of people come to me for weight loss. Many begin their journey and then throw the towel in because they deem it to be too difficult. But the people who stay or come back and gravitate from initially being low carb into a dirty keto lifestyle and then standard, then strict, and then becoming carnivore are the people like you and I who have done it for health benefits. But it's almost seemed to be a magic elixir. Well, it is, in my opinion, this lifestyle is this magic elixir. It's almost the key to helping almost everything, but people don't see it that way initially. It's almost that the bait that catches the fish is that weight loss. They begin the journey, then they notice, oh, my aches and pains have gone away. I've got more energy. I've got more mental clarity. And then they gravitate into becoming carnivore because they've noticed that, all of these issues are clearing up, and then they tick in these boxes one by one until, they're so far down the rabbit hole that, they're in the situation where you and I are, and they're out the other side of the rabbit hole, going, fairly strict carnivore. But as you say, I didn't wake up and become carnivore. I gravitate. It's taken me, well, I've been on my journey for 11 years. So I've been keto for 11 years. 4 or 5 of those years now have been carnivore. But carnivore, in regards to being quite, I don't want to say relaxed. I mean, I thought that I was strict until I learned a piece of information. And then it's like, oh, well, I can take that out. And then you take something else out. And then and before you know it, 4 years in of what you thought was strict carnivore wasn't actually strict at all. But you can't just begin your journey and go 110 miles an hour into this lifestyle. So I think you're right. There are people who can do that, who maybe need to for medical purposes. But I think generally the way that you push it is a gravitational process, isn't it? So and I think one of the things that you mentioned, I can't remember if it was in the 24 Live or if it's on your YouTube channel, that you're carnivore, but you're not, strict carnivore. Is that still the case? Or, are you? Yeah. So, I mean.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, a fair question. Yeah. I mean, strict carnivore, strictly speaking, you're talking about you're eating beef, eggs, fish, dairy. That's a strict carnivore. People say dairy isn't strict carnivore. I say, well, dairy comes from a cow, which is an animal.
Yeah.
So, it's a bit bizarre. But then you have hypercarnivore, which might be 70% plus nutrient value being from animal foods. I'd say nutrient value wise, if you're talking about protein, carb, fat grams, whatever, I'm 99% carnivore right now. I do have 1 to 2 meals off plan or off way of eating each month. There'll be somewhat low toxicity meals in most cases. So it might just be some white rice with like a Chinese or white rice and, some chicken with some sauce and or something, That isn't always the case. Sometimes I might not have it. So the option is there for me to have it if I want to have it. Now, some people have to be stricter than that. But what I'm realizing more and more now is that most people aren't strict on their diet at all. 100%. I'd say most people I speak to, maybe, I don't know, maybe 90% of people have about 80% adherence.
Yeah. And
they're wondering why they're still spinning their wheels, still having to watch all these podcasts and work out what the problem is with their diet. The problem is you're not sticking to the diet. And it sounds a bit like, abrupt or a bit abrasive maybe, but the thing is you won't get all the benefits unless you do it. I know myself, like I confess, like, yeah, once or twice a month I have an off carnivore meal. But if I do have that off meal, I make sure it's foods which I can tolerate a bit better than others. For me, chocolate's out the window. Berries are completely out the window. Those two things make me really sick. They make me feel horrendous. So I do not eat those foods. People have to weigh it out for themselves what they want to achieve and how they're going to go about it. I think one thing which has become more apparent to me is if you want to change your physiology, you have to change your focus. That's a quote I pulled from somewhere else. I can't remember where, but your physiology will not change overnight. You have to adapt to it. So like you said about you gravitate towards a more carnivore diet, a more ancestral way of living. People start to get the diet right. Are they getting appropriate sunlight exposure? Are they staring at a screen like I am right now? Are they wearing blue blocking glasses at if you guys have watched me on Bart Cage YouTube channel, we're on polar opposite sides of the world. One of us will always be wearing blue blocking glasses in pretty much every instance because we're opposite time zones. That's when we record. So we have to take these things more seriously. Now, some people, they might not find benefits from all these extra things. They might seemingly be fine. But for me, I notice a cause and effect difference. So I don't have the option or the freedom of not being pretty strict and adhering to the diet. I do it because I want to live better. I want to thrive. So I want people to be I want to be very transparent here. This is what I do, and this is the reason why I'm trying to do it. I'm trying to achieve something. It's not an option to just lay on my laurels and just, I'm going to have a chocolate bar today. Oh, it's fine. I go to the gym. I'm quite big. I'll burn it off. Well, great. You'll still have to deal with the toxicity from it anyway. So, yeah, that's what I think towards it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you've hit the nail right on the head, because one thing I noticed from that 24-hour Carnivore-a-thon was that very few of the guests on there were as strict as you'd think that they would be. I think Anthony Chaffee is incredibly strict to the point where he doesn't consume coffee. I agree with what he's saying. Coffee, acrylamide, does cause inflammation. It does cause aches and pains in the body. It's accumulative. It can lead to cancer. But I still drink coffee now and again. I don't drink it every day. Some days I drink more than others. Sometimes I'll go weeks without it, but I still, I couldn't honestly say to someone that I don't drink coffee, so that's my little bit. Everybody else we spoke to puts, as you say, maybe white rice in, or berries, or I think Dr. Kilt said, makes ice cream, doesn't he? So, he treats himself to ice cream. I think the difference is, once you've healed your gut, and that's the most important thing, isn't it? Once you've healed that gut, you can tolerate things a lot better, and it's finding those things you can tolerate with. And there's also another aspect of like a mental reset. So I don't want to use the term cheat or treat, because it's perceived negatively, I think, if you look at it that way. But I look at it as like a targeted glyco refeed or something, or words to that effect. If I was to put some carb in, because it's a date or a time that I've told myself that I'm allowed to put something in. I'm careful in regards to what goes in. If I do put carb in, white rice is my preference. I do indulge on some of the keto treats occasionally. I eat Greek yogurt now and again. But generally, my day-to-day life is what I'd call strict carnivore. I think there's very few people probably on the planet that are as strict as me in regards to the food I eat. On a monthly basis, I would eat nothing more than meat, eggs, fish, and cheese. I don't even drink A2 milk. But then, I'll have a Greek yogurt now and again. And now and again, I'll, as you say, I'll have some coffee and stuff. But I think that's important, because the keto or carnivore police, I don't know if you noticed during the Carnivore-a-thon, when people were mentioning this, they would jump in down their backs. Everybody does it. And I think the fact that you're open and you tell people, I'll have a Chinese with white rice. But it's targeted. It's done intentionally. It's not a case of you've done it off the cuff. You've gone out to McDonald's just because you feel like a sugar hit. And you understand the repercussions. The berries don't serve you. The chocolate. So you avoid these foods. So I think that's important. I think one of the things you teach is to gravitate slowly, which is really important. And secondly, not to beat yourself up if you do overindulge on something. Just pick yourself back up. As long as you are strict most of the time, you can. It's all about the rule and not the exception, isn't it? So if you are going to be carnivore for most of the time, who am I to say not to put in a little bit of honey, or have a Chinese, or whatever it may be? But it's understanding the impacts in regards to the foods that are going to cause issues, isn't it? But that's one thing that really is a massive bugbear for me lately is the keto and carnivore police. Everyone's on a different part of their journey. Someone coming into this who is low carb and still consuming foods that contain low levels of gluten but are reduced in gluten, that's a step in the right direction. Take gluten out completely if you can. But then when we take out gluten, people seem to forget that gluten's a lectin, and lectins are found in bell peppers, in onions, potatoes, carrots. Exactly. They'll still continue to eat these foods. So they'll come down on these people who are consuming, the low gluten things, while stuffing their face with peppers and tomatoes. So there's a big education piece there, isn't it? But it's one of my biggest bugbears. And I think the way that you teach that, and openly, talk about it is incredible. So moving on from that, I mean, you've had a big operation recently, haven't you?
Oh yeah, I had a decompression, laminectomy, and spinal fusion surgery in December 2022.
Wow.
2020, yeah.
Major surgery.
Yeah, quite a big one. It's the second most painful surgery you can have, apparently.
Wow.
So I was well up for it, of course.
Yeah.
Nah,
Out of curiosity, what's the first?
Yeah.
Do you know?
Yeah, it's a heel surgery. So they drill something into your heel. And there's a lot of pain receptors in your heel, apparently.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting one, that one. Yeah, I mean, people... the funny thing is, I did get a lot of pushback about having a surgery, you know. People in the carnivore sort of way of eating, they're like, oh, you know, you can just reduce inflammation. I had a structural deformity of my body which was pinching on the nerves in my spine. I can't unpick that with anti-inflammatory herbs. I can't do that with medication. I needed something to change the structure of my body. Yes, the diet has improved some aspects of it, definitely. You know, like sleeping better, having the exact nutrients in your body at the right time to rebuild nerve tissues. Yeah, all these things have helped. But the surgery was needed. It has been restrictive in some ways, but what was interesting was my ability to get back to the gym. I think it was about 8 days after surgery, I was back training at home.
Wow.
Yeah, I love to train, but what I was doing was a very safe, kind of effective way of doing it. Body weight stuff, you know, against the sofa, against the bed, using my Zimmer frame, all that sort of stuff. And I've documented some of this on my YouTube channel, just a few little clips here and there. Yeah, what's interesting is I've now got pain in my right hip, which is like a stabbing, sharp pain. It sort of radiates down my leg. I think it's definitely impacted my ability to do a lot of things throughout the day. So I might not be able to swim again. I might not be able to walk long distances again, that sort of thing. But the main thing is I'm just trying to get closer and closer towards my goal, which is to not be in pain. It's just amazing extents we have to go to get to that point. It's very odd, but you know, the diet I'm on is the best diet I can be on. The training that I do is the most sensible training that I can do. I'm pulling in all these things, all these ancestral tenets, you know, the light exposure, the grounding, you know, earthing, all these things to improve my health outcomes, because we can't just pull from the diet and say it's going to do everything. I think it's definitely a multifaceted approach for a lot of us.
I agree. I think the diet is going to have the biggest impact. I know that, you know, you're a big advocate of training, and I know you say that that's well underestimated, and I agree. But I still think that 80%, if not more, of the benefits of health are going to come from nutrition.
Oh yeah.
And then the training, and then as you say, it's a multifaceted approach in regards to grounding, you know, UV or blue light blocking, changing the things that you put on your skin to tallow products, because up until recently I was using products on my skin that contained toxins that I wouldn't consume. Now I wouldn't put anything onto my skin that I wouldn't consume orally. So it's this gravitation into becoming a biohacker, isn't it? And learning new things and understanding the treatments like cold water therapy or cold water dipping, things that are going to help. And then, I mean, coming back to what you said about, you know, these antioxidants in herbs and stuff. I mean, I'm not a big believer in antioxidants from herbs either. So, I mean, when people say from diet and antioxidants, it's a lot of these antioxidants are pro-oxidants. They activate something called the NRF2 pathway, which is an oxidative stress pathway. And what we see is an elevation in glutathione, which is what scientists see as this antioxidant effect. But this NRF2 pathway is the same pathway that's activated through the ingestion of arsenic, mercury, lead. So for us to you know, agree that turmeric, or curcumin, or spinach, for example, which I know you've taken out, are antioxidants, then we must also reside to the fact that arsenic, mercury, and lead are antioxidants, and we know that they're not. You know, and coming back to the autism side of things. I mean, it's the diet has a massive impact, isn't it? I know this isn't something you can change, but it's obviously something you've improved massively. And I know that you've taken out things like spinach and almonds, things that we know are high in oxalates, because what a lot of people don't understand is that, you know, curcumin, turmeric, and spinach incredibly high in oxalates. They cause damage to DNA. It causes hyperoxaluria, which leads to hypothyroidism and even autism. And I think this is where you've seen a massive benefit in removing these, isn't it? But these are foods that we're told are incredibly good for us. We're told to consume these on a daily basis and put into our. And I've done this myself. I've been guilty. I used to make my
salads.
spinach, and yeah. Some of these foods are toxic. Well, all plants, I believe, are toxic, and this is what I've learned from Dr. Chafee. He's looked into carcinogens within plants, and they found over 56 known carcinogens in vegetables that we would buy and consume every day. And obviously, you've noticed that berries are one of these triggers for you. The anthocyanin probably in the berries is causing issues with you. In regards to the spinach, it's the curcumin and the oxalates, rather. But it's crazy because these foods that we are told to consume that will help with these things are usually the foods that have caused or maybe heavily contributed to them. So is it safe to say that obviously you've gone down the route of surgery because there's a natural deformity there, but Carnivore has massively helped with the recovery process. I mean, that operation, what's the usual recovery time? I should imagine that would be months, and you were back doing body weight training in 7-8 days.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on your podcast, but I'm tenacious as fuck. I'm probably the most tenacious person you'll ever meet. I say that quite handedly because I was in a lot of pain around that time of surgery. But I knew if I just laid in bed, my pain would be worse. I know Stephen Thomas, who we're both friendly with, we both think the same thing. If you lie in bed all day, your body's going to get all tight, sore. So although I was in pain to do the movement, it wasn't damaging pain. It was just my body trying to readjust. So I was giving it that stimulus. Okay, well, this gravity, this pressure on my bones will force the fusion to happen a bit quicker than otherwise. So that's why I was able to get to that point where I was, back in the gym after a month. And going to the point of like the time frame, most people aren't really doing much for maybe 3 to 6 months at all. They might be go for a short walk. It's one of those surgeries which is it's not something you have the option of doing. Then you think, yeah, I'll do it. I'll be all right for a bit. I'll just take some time off the gym. You'll be sat on your ass for a long time. For most people, the diet has been very impactful, very, very impactful. And it's funny actually. I remember being in this position where I was in the hospital and I was lying down. And obviously to put me down with my body weight, they had to put a ton of drugs into me. And the first day I couldn't actually get up at all. And that's the typical practice in this country, is to get up. Maybe the evening of the surgery, maybe 6-8 hours after you've had it. My body wouldn't do it, but my spine had something called crepitus in it. So it's actually creeping or creaking as I was walking. So it sounded like I had an old ship in my back. But that something which usually persists for quite a long time. But for me, that went away quite quickly, which is quite strange. But yeah, imagine me walking along with crutches and Zimmer frame. And back there, it's like, It was hilarious, honestly. Yeah.
Brilliant. But yeah, incredible. I mean, there's so much there, isn't it, in regards to healing and repairing, because what does our diet consist of? It's lots of protein, lots of salt, lots of fat. Those are, I think, the three main contributing factors. And then, arguably even more important, we've removed foods that are causing malabsorption issues. We've taken away the lectins and phytic acid. So now the lectins and phytic acid are no longer blocking the absorption. They're allowing the body to actually absorb the fat and the protein to heal and repair. And then, so that's the muscle fibers, the tendons, even the bones. Bones are made from protein. Bone is mineralized protein. So we need protein and we need minerals, particularly salt. And one of the things that we're told to do in regards to bone strength is calcium supplementation. But we can't send calcium to the bone unless we increase sodium. They're directly correlated. So we can slow the degradation of bone down through calcium supplementation, because the body will use that over taking it from bone. but we can't put calcium into the bone unless we increase salt, and we consume lots of salt. So it comes back to this multifaceted approach. We're consuming protein, which is healing and repairing the body, is healing and repairing the bones. The salt is repairing the bones and repairing, rebuilding, recovering. The lectins and phytic acid that we're no longer consuming, the anti-nutrients in the veg, all of this is allowing us to heal and repair considerably quicker. And our cholesterol levels, because we're no longer consuming the phytosterols, so our cholesterol is not being artificially lowered, and cholesterol is essential for healing. So I think this is why, it's your diet that I attribute that healing time to, which is something I can attest to. I had an operation, my goodness, 2 or 3 years ago now, where I had an abscess in my arm. The wound had to remain open, and I was told 12 weeks for it to heal, and it healed in 24 days, 9 weeks quicker than the doctors and nurses had ever seen anything heal before. And I was back training, soon after, lifting light weights in the gym. I'd lost a lot of size. So there's actually a picture of me the first time I actually wore a t-shirt giving a presentation, and I looked awful. I looked ill. I looked, really frail in this t-shirt that used to be tight on me. And then 2 weeks after, I was back to being the size that I was prior to that, which tells me a number of things. Like when we stop training, people think that we lose muscle mass incredibly quickly. I lost volume, but my strength and size came back within 2 weeks. So I think that living the lifestyle, the BHB, production of beta hydroxybutyrate, is anti-catabolic at the site of the muscle. So even though I went smaller, I hadn't lost any muscle. And I think, in my opinion, you can't maintain top-end strength if you've lost muscle. And I was back to lifting PBs within 2 weeks when I was back training. Obviously, incremented the weight slowly. And I was back to the same size. The t-shirt there was fitting again. So I think it's to do with volume in the muscle. If you're not working the muscle, the blood, the glycogen, because despite common misconception, we still put glycogen into the muscle being carnivore, even though we don't consume carbs. The water with the electrolytes. So for me, the diet allowed me to heal and repair incredibly quickly. And within no time at all, I was back to my former glory without any muscle wastage. After 8 weeks of no training, because the abscess was so severe, I didn't train for 4 weeks. And then I was off for 4 weeks after the op. So it was 8 weeks without training. And then within 2 weeks after that, I was back lifting PBs and back to my size again, which is, you tell that to somebody who consumes carbs and trains, and they'd think you were absolutely bonkers, But this lifestyle for me, it's absolutely incredible. But it's absolutely life-changing. So what decided to make you gravitate into this? So were you aware of all the benefits initially in regards to carnivore, or was it something that you stumbled upon? So for me, I came into it because I was clinically obese and type 2 diabetic, and vanity brought me into it because I wanted my chest to be further out than my belly, and it wasn't at the time. So vanity brought me in, and then, all of these things that the doctor told me that I was going to be suffering from for the rest of my life, things that I was going to need medication for the rest of my life, went away. And then I began to gravitate. So were you aware of the benefits, or did you just sort of stumble into it and learn, as you went?
Yeah, if I'm honest, I think it's a bit of both. I mean, depending on where you listen to my backstory, I'll give a slightly different slant to it. But the only reason for that is it's a combination of lots of different reasons. I can't outline them all in a podcast. I'll be here for hours. It basically came down to my logic from what I had presented to me in front of me at a given time. So I was working in a shop with people coming in that are very unwell, that never got well. This happened over and over and over again. Then I stumbled across people like, I don't know, Bart Kay, Sean Baker, all those sort of people. And I was like, they're saying it's good. Like, usually when people do something that's completely opposite of what the common dogma is, or the conventional wisdom, usually it's a lie, or they're trying to sell you something. It turned out they weren't trying to sell me something. I usually, like a lot of people nowadays, you follow the money. You try and work out what their endeavour is, what their prerogative is. Now, I did try some kind of weird variation of the carnivore diet without it being a carnivore diet, so to speak, when I was like maybe 16. I was competing for a bodybuilding show, wanted to get as lean as possible, basically ate tuna and eggs for 5 months straight. It got me lean, but it didn't get me very, very lean. I felt like crap. My digestion got better because I was eating less toxins, but I'm highly suspect I had some mercury poisoning at that time. So I went off the diet, didn't eat much meat for a while, maybe a few years. I just ate some, but not a lot. Slowly went on the carb train to build loads of muscle. I did gain a lot of weight, which I think a lot of people do, because with carbs, you don't get the same satiety signal you get with protein and fat in a carnivore diet. But the weight wasn't necessarily good weight. I didn't feel good. My health markers weren't better. I had kidney stones at one point from, the spinach that we mentioned earlier. That wasn't fun. So yeah, it's for all those sort of things, all those sort of reasons, my logic came to the fact that we're not meant to eat these things. Like, how many times have I had sweet corn and it's not digested properly? How many times have I had watermelon? Have I had fruit? The berries, for example, the chocolate. I eat the chocolate and I feel worse. My mum, for example, I'm pretty sure she has the same genetic polymorphism I do. She eats chocolate and she feels like crap. She'll then spend the next day in bed. The same thing will happen to me. So therefore, that tells me something about these foods, which is supposedly, well, it's high in, I don't know, magnesium. It's high in this antioxidant. It's high in this anti-aging compound, which no one knows fuck all about. No, not for me. It doesn't do that for me. I think a lot of the issues that we have with all these plant things is it's reductionist science. They're looking at things in vitro in a petri dish, which doesn't come true or come to fruition when you put that compound within the human body. Like you said about the glutathione. Okay, fine. Well, if you want to maximize your glutathione production, do the natural hormesis, do the cold therapies, do the grounding.
100%.
Going to bed at night and going to sleep at night, turning your screen off at night, which most people don't do. Then once you've done all these things and you've not got the results you want, then you can start looking at the products, all these extra things. But 99% of the benefits you're probably going to get are going to be for all the natural remedies. So that's why the carnivore diet appeals to me. I didn't like being in a position when I was working at a vegan shop where I was encouraged to sell things which I wasn't sure that would help people. I knew ultimately if they changed their diet and changed their lifestyle, they'd have all the benefits they need. But people were coming to you because they trust you. And it put me in a bad way. So of course I left that company, had another job at one point. I think I was working at Mountain Warehouse, just to kill time basically. Then I thought, okay, I'm going to set up my own business properly now. I've done my research. I have my qualifications. I can vouch for what I'm trying to do and trying to achieve. Then henceforth, competition consultant, YouTube channel, coaching, all that sort of thing. And yeah, it's been very interesting. Looking back in time, I was never really sold on, the food pyramid. I thought it doesn't really make sense logically. I work on logic. My personality type is INTJ. That's, for anyone that knows the Briggs-Myers test, it's quite an unusual character to have. It's one of the rarest forms to have. I analyze everything. And the more I analyze, the more worrying it is in some senses. So that's why I'm always trying to take on this lackadaisical approach now, where I realize most people are going to lie to you. Most people are going to sell stuff you don't need. Most people are going to try and be in it for their own gain. So I gravitate towards empathetic people that are honest, sincere, people that do the research, like Richard, like Coach Stephen, Sean Baker, people that actually give something to people. People like Richard isn't making like hundreds of dollars or pounds on this video that you're watching right now. He's not making loads of money.
I won't make anything off it.
I won't make anything.
I don't even get paid for my YouTube channel, so I'm not even making
monetized.
Yeah, it's not even monetized, so I don't make a penny.
It's a passion project, guys.
Exactly.
So as soon as you start realizing that, you'll start to realize there are people out there trying to help you, and there are groups, there are Facebook groups, there are forums, there are free videos like this to be helpful to you. So yeah, that's what I think anyway.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I appreciate you saying it's, and you're 100% spot on. My wife and I used to own 3 houses, and now we rent. There's nothing wrong with renting, but I've given up the better part of £500,000 in assets to put into the business, to spread, the word of something that has changed my life. It's allowed me to reverse my diabetes. I was clinically obese, suffered with chronic fatigue, depression, anxiety, arthritic pains, daily debilitating migraines, acne, just to mention a few. This lifestyle has changed that for me, and that's what I do. The same as you. It's a passion. I go out there and I'll tell anybody that's willing to listen. And this is what, these podcasts are about, you and I chatting about the benefits that you've received from, from living the lifestyle. Yes, we've both got businesses, but we should be paid also for the service that we provide, in regards to consulting, because a doctor gets paid for their work. If you go to a doctor and they issue with pain medication, they're being paid for that. Now, you and I are not being paid for today. We're putting this information out there to re-educate people. But obviously, these links, for your consultant, are going to be below. If should people want to discuss this further with you, then they can sign up to you as a consultant and get an in-depth, tuition based on them as an individual, isn't it? So it's more tailored. So at the end of the day, we still need to pay our bills. The bills still need to be paid. I don't know if it's the same for you, but I mean, I've barely taken a wage out since I started the business. I've never been so worse off in my life financially, but it's a passion.
You're doing it wrong, Richard. You're doing it wrong.
Yeah, it's for sure. I think you're right. I probably spend too much of my time, doing free, podcasts and free consultations and speaking to people. But again, it is a passion for us, isn't it? And for me, it's about spreading the word, and that's exactly what we've done today. I mean, listening to your story is going to be super, super informative and, oh my God, what's the word I'm looking for? Inspirational, to others who are listening, who are coming from this, a similar background, isn't it? Which is absolutely incredible. So, kudos to you for doing that. There was one other thing that I wanted to go into before we wrap it up. Now, one of the things that I get asked quite a lot about, from people who are educated within the community, who dabble within sort of keto, carnivore, low carb, understand the benefit of consuming animal proteins, but are concerned about excess protein consumption, to do with something called the methionine to glycine ratio. Are you familiar with the methionine?
Yeah, I'm quite familiar with that. Yeah.
Brilliant. So, just for the sake of the viewers, it's methionine and glycine is two amino acids found in meat, but we need a specific ratio. So methionine is an essential amino acid, as it's a source of methyl groups for hundreds, if not thousands, of biochemical reactions within the body. It's used during the folate cycle to create something called SAMe. SAMe is responsible for hundreds of reactions like tackling inflammation, detoxing the body, neurotransmitters. But too much is buffered, it's excreted through the body, it's buffered by glycine. And glycine is needed for collagen production, which is also important for the strength of tendons, bones, ligaments, hair, skin, nails, all sorts of stuff, and serving as a neurotransmitter signal in the brain. So there's a balance that needs to be maintained within the body. And the fear is when we consume nothing but meat, that we push this methionine to glycine ratio out of whack. Have you got any thoughts or experience in regards to that? I mean, there is something that I do to try to combat that. It is something that I've looked into extensively, because I do take people's, criticisms or worries on board seriously. But that is a big concern for people within the community, isn't it? Can you just live on meat? Do you have you got an opinion or any research? Yeah. Brilliant.
Yeah. So I understand this question. I understand where you're coming from. I understand why it's important to people. Typically people in the anti-aging kind of industry, they have, oftentimes they're endorsed and affiliated by different anti-aging products. So like I mentioned earlier, like the glutathione, maybe the NAD supplements, all these different things. Now the idea is if we consume, I think it's something like 10 to 15 grams of glycine per day, we will receive some kind of anti-aging benefit, some kind of skin improvement benefit, some kind of joint improvement benefit. The problem with that is, with our diets the way they are nowadays, there's not a lot of gristle in the meat we eat. There's not a lot of connective tissue. We don't really eat that sort of thing for the most part. There is some on skin and things like that. So people might eat chicken thighs with, skin around it. I think for the most part, I mean, I've looked at this in my chronometer app, so tracking food intakes and stuff, I'm probably getting about 6 grams of glycine per day. The recommendation, like I mentioned, is something like 10 to 15 grams per day. I'm a 6'1", very heavy bodybuilder that trains intensely about 3-4 times a week. Now, saying that, do I have a deficiency in glycine? Are my joints snapping? Are my tendons snapping? Is my skin falling off? My hair's already fallen out, but that's besides the point. But yeah, no, the answer is no, I don't have a deficiency. I don't have a noteworthy deficiency. I've not had a blood marker which would suggest that I'm deficient in anything that I can find, basically. Now, would those sort of things be useful? So supplemental forms, whether it be a glycine supplement to balance out the methionine glycine ratio, or collagen, or gelatin. Well, yeah, it might be useful, but it might also not do anything. This is the sort of instance where someone should perform an N equals 1, a study for themselves. Fortunately, these sort of supplements, these sort of amino acids are quite cheap for the most part, so you can try using it. I'm not convinced that it makes a massive difference, assuming you're eating a whole food carnivore diet. Now, if you're eating a diet which will be low in glycine, so it might be a diet that's very high in dairy and very low in meat, well, yeah, that's going to be more useful to you. I think you have to outline deficiency first and foremost. Look at the research. Is the research in vitro? Is it done in rodents? Is it done in humans? Then work from there. There is a lot of different pieces of research. Everyone wants to live forever, don't they? Everyone wants to have youthful skin and that sort of thing. The thing is, we see people like yourself, 40 years old and you look about 28. You see
I'll take it.
Other people, I mean, Sean Baker, I know you met him and I met him in Sheffield about a month or two ago. Sean Baker doesn't look 56 years old. He looks about 50, if that.
And
and he's really
Stephen Thomas. Looks,
yeah, I think he's 59 and looks about 50 or something.
Yeah. I had him down as in his late 40s. So, yeah, incredible.
It's a surprise. So that kind of tells me, anecdotally, for what it's worth, I mean, look around you. Are people aging slower on a carnivore diet? Yes. Therefore, it's very unlikely that there is a deficiency in glycine. That's my opinion anyway. I'm one of those people that don't really sell a lot of products. I don't promote many things. I think some things and some supplements are useful, definitely, in certain circumstances. But the main thing is outline deficiency, look around you, see what's going on, look at the studies and interpret it from there.
Yeah, I agree. I think, coming back to what you said about connective tissue, the gristle on meats and stuff. So I'll eat all of the gristle and the joints on the bones. I'll eat as much of the bone tissue as I can, for what better word. I'll eat the stringy bits in the steak. So I consume an awful lot of the bits that people would leave or cut out. So and when we look at meat in general, I mean, there's lots of ratios touted around, isn't it, in regards to what's optimal. If we go with the general standard way of thinking, which is like a 4-to-1 ratio, meat from a steak perspective, red meat is roughly 2.5 to 3-to-1 naturally anyway. So there's not an awful lot that we need to get from connective tissue. I think if we are consuming meat off the bone, and we're consuming the stringy bits in the steak, that generally we get plenty. I do supplement with collagen because I make it. I'm not saying that you have to. I'm not saying exactly the same as you. If you've got a deficiency, it's a fantastic product. If you don't need to take it. But what I've found is, because I've recently started running and cycling, it's having a massive impact on my joints and ligaments. And it's one of those things that when I use, I don't notice a benefit, but when I forget to take it for a week, it's like, oh, I'm having a niggle back again. All I eat is meat. So I don't think that typically I have a glycine deficiency. But the collagen that I take, I think for me, it seems to make a difference. And again, that's not a sales pitch. Food is always the number one source.
Keep at it.
But
like I get some grief sometimes. Like I'll occasionally use, for example, a lysine balm supplement. If I've got a viral flare, what's better for me to use, an antiviral or lysine? The lysine is going to be infinitely better in terms of health outcomes. Then other instances, say my appetite's gone. say I want to do a long fast for whatever reason. I have a large expenditure, metabolic rate or high metabolic rate. I might supplement with a B complex. People think, yeah, you can do it. All these things are like biohacks. So like you said, you might not have a deficiency, but you might find it useful. So if you find it useful, keep using it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's what Bart K says. So yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree. And diet is always number one, isn't it? I mean, it comes back down to the food that we eat. That is, as we say, by far the majority of the benefits. Jonathan, I've taken up over an hour of your time. I think there's so much more we could have gone into. And if you're up for it, I'd love to get you back on so we can go into, the training side of things and what you do with your clients and how you've achieved. I think I'm really looking forward to that. I wanted to get into it today, but I knew that the topics that I'd written down were it's taken us an hour. So God knows how long the next one will take. But
Richard, my YouTube channel on a Monday, I host something called Carnivore Muscle Ramblings.
Right.
And that was made because I had a troll comment about 8-9 months ago that said, "Oh, this guy rambles too much." And now I'm just going to own it.
Definitely. Oh, there's nothing wrong with that for sure. I get carried away. But again, there's nothing wrong with rambling. So if you're up for that, we'll get another one booked in. But in the meantime, Jonathan, where can people find you? Obviously, we've got the composition consultant above. Obviously, there's an audio thing as well, but that's compositionconsultant.com. Where else can people find you? Where's your YouTube and your Instagram and whatever other platforms that you operate from?
Sure. So the YouTube is just Composition Consultant. And my Instagram is composition_consultant. So I keep it very simple across all platforms. So
perfect.
Notice the alliteration as well. That wasn't deliberate, but yeah.
Perfect. Nice and easy. And I'll pop those links below. But Jonathan, pleasure chatting. Thank you so much for coming on and look forward to getting you on again in the future.
Thank you, and you.